Hello everyone and welcome to today's video. Today we're looking at the 2025 Virginia governor's race and going over a recent update in the polling which shows the race did get slightly more close, slightly more competitive, but where things currently stand right now. So Virginia is one of two governor's races that are up in 2025 along with New Jersey. I just did a video on New Jersey and the updated polling data for that yesterday. Make sure to check that out after this video as well if you are interested. Virginia is currently held by the Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin, who won a very close election in 2021. Now, a Democrat and Republican are running in this governor's race in 2025. Democrats are hoping to flip the usually likely blue state back to the Democratic side. Republicans are trying to narrowly keep it in the Republican direction. Just to give you an idea, Virginia and New Jersey actually voted very similarly in 2024 at the presidential level. Kamala Harris, the former VP, won the state of Virginia by 5.8%. Over Donald Trump, Trump getting around 46% of the vote. Now, New Jersey also right around 5.9%. So both these states were very similar in 2024. The difference was back in 2020, Joe Biden defeated Donald Trump in the state of Virginia by roughly 10 points, 10.1% over Trump. So we did see a double-digit win at the presidential level in Virginia not too long ago. Now, for the Virginia governor's race, we're going to first go to the top here. The two candidates are the Lieutenant Governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia and Winsome Earle-Sears. She is the Republican nominee. On the Democratic side, the former U.S. Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger of the 7th District. She is the Democratic nominee. Now, as the reason you're watching this video, and as I showed you briefly here, the polling shows Abigail Spanberger with a very strong likelihood of winning this race. Now, in the most recent numbers, though, things have gotten a little bit closer due to the fact in the three most recent polling for the month of October, two of which have been Republican polls. Now, the averages still show Abigail Spanberger with a pretty solid lead. Real Clear Politics has Spanberger at 50.3, Sears 43.8. Still roughly 6% of voters are undecided. Spanberger has 6.5% lead over Winsome Sears at this current point in time. The Decision Desk HQ has Spanberger at 49.9, Sears 44.1, 6% undecided, Spanberger 5.8% lead. Race to the White House has a little bit of a larger lead for Spanberger at 51%, Winsome Sears at 43, 6% undecided, a 8-point lead for Spanberger. On average, Spanberger has 50.4%, Sears 43.6%, 6% undecided, with a 6.8% lead for Spanberger over Sears. Now, first thing I just want to note before going more in depth on the recent polls is interesting how many undecided voters there are in this governor's race, where right now it's around 6 points or so that are undecided. When I just did the New Jersey one, it's around 9 to 10 points or so that are currently undecided. So it's interesting more voters in Virginia seem to have their minds made up of the two candidates, Spanberger and Sears. Now, on this one, it seems more people have their minds made up on the Democratic side of things. Abigail Spanberger being around 50% in all three of the polling averages, while Winsome Sears is right around 43 to 44%. She's running roughly a point to 2 points better than her fellow Republican Jack Ciattarelli is in New Jersey, while in that race, the Democrat Mikey Sherrill is running about 3 points behind, given on the polling average, Abigail Spanberger. So in comparing the two, Abigail Spanberger certainly is in a much stronger position to be elected the next governor of the state of Virginia than Mikey Sherrill is in New Jersey. But for the purpose of today's video, this video is about Virginia. Abigail Spanberger is in a very strong standing in this race. Now, the two most recent polls, came from Signal, a Republican-aligned pollster, which showed Spanberger leading Sears by roughly about 4 points, with still 6% undecided. Now, I said this in the prior video as well. My usual rule for partisan polls is I usually shift the results 5 points in the opposite direction of the partisan pollster to account for the political bias of the poll itself and accounting for their favorable view of the candidate. So a 4-point lead for Spanberger over Sears roughly equates to around a 9-point lead for my own rankings of Spanberger over Sears in this poll, which is a little bit higher, actually about 3 points higher than the current polling averages. Now, for the public policy polling, this is a Democratic pollster, and it shows Abigail Spanberger leading Winsome Sears 52 to 43. That is a 9-point margin over Spanberger over Sears with 5% undecided. Now, again, shifting that 9-point margin 5 points or so, that would be right around a 4-point lead for Spanberger over Sears. Now, in the Trafalgar group, this is a Republican, one of the top Republican pollsters. This one shows a 3-point lead for Spanberger over Sears. But again, using that 5-point rule, that goes up to about 8 points 2% say other, 6% undecided. So the average here being around a 4 to 8 point lead or so is right around what the polling data is pretty much suggesting. Now, right now, it seems the race has narrowed up because a few weeks ago, we saw Spanberger leading in these polls by around 7, 8, even 9 points at times. Now, as the general election has gotten closer, Spanberger's leading by about 6.5%, 5.8%, and 8% in these polling averages. Now, Virginia's past two governor's elections are sort of a different tale of what we could be expecting for election night in 2025. Now, first, I'm going to pull up the governor's race in the state of Virginia, I'm going to pull up the governor's race, in Virginia for 2021 here. Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, was running in a year that the Democratic President Joe Biden was really not popular. And the way these governor's elections in the off year usually go is the opposite party of the president in the White House usually does very well, either winning or doing much better than it normally would. And in this situation, the Democratic President Joe Biden was very unpopular. Glenn Youngkin, the Republican, was able to defeat former Democratic Governor Terry McAuliffe by 2 points, getting 50.6% of the vote, McAuliffe getting 48.6%. Even though the polling in the final few days showed Youngkin taking the lead in this race, it was still a Republican governor win in a state that just voted for Joe Biden by roughly 10 points. It was still a little bit of a political shock, especially when you consider how well Glenn Youngkin did throughout all the parts of western and middle parts of Virginia as expected, but also in the Virginia Beach area, winning it by 8 points, Chesapeake by 6 points, and Youngkin really holding down the Democratic margins in the D.C. suburbs, Loudoun being an 11-point win, Prince William 15-point win, and Fairfax overall being about a 30-point win. This is about as well as a Republican has done in the state of Virginia in a very, very long time. So that was a massive win for Glenn Youngkin. Now, what's also could be happening in relation to 2025 is what we saw in 2017, where the Democratic governor, Ralph Northam, defeated the Republican Ed Gillespie to become the next governor of Virginia after Donald Trump was elected president in 2016. Lots of stuff happened in Virginia, also including the Charlottesville riot situation that happened as well. That likely boosted Democratic turnout as well in this race. What ended up happening was Ralph Northam won while Donald Trump was the president and was unpopular at the time by 8.9% over Ed Gillespie. Now, those counties I showed you, like Virginia Beach and the D.C. suburbs, this is what they looked like in 2017. Virginia Beach voted blue by roughly about 5 points for Northam over Gillespie. Chesapeake voted blue for Northam over Gillespie by around 8 points. The D.C. suburbs, way more blue. Loudoun was 20 points for Northam. Prince William was about 22 points. Fairfax was about 36. So you see the margins increase about 5-6% here or there in the D.C. suburbs, and then Virginia Beach and Chesapeake being a lot more blue than not going red like they did for Youngkin in 2021. This is what the Democrats won like in 2017, roughly 8.9%. So when we're talking about Virginia for 2025, what's this race shaping more like to be? Well, it's definitely not looking like 2021 where Glenn Youngkin won by 2 points and where Northam defeated Gillespie by 8.9%. That seems to be where this race is more in line looking like. It's also worth noting that Sears is getting around that 42-43% or so in most of the polls, getting up to 45 in some of the polls. And as I just showed you, in the 2017 race, we did just see Ed Gillespie, or not did just see, but we saw Ed Gillespie get 45% on the dot, which is right around where Winsome Sears is getting in a lot of these polls. So if all the undecided voters break for Ralph Northam the same way, or break for Abigail Spanberger the same way they broke for Ralph Northam, we may very well see essentially a repeat of 2017, where the Republican floor in Virginia is going to be around 44-45%, and the Democrats essentially win everything else. And that could ultimately what we see end up happening. Now, the only difference between 2017 and now is actually, despite obviously Democratic turnout and anti-Donald Trump sentiment still being very strong, the president's actually polling better than he was at this current point in time than he was in 2017. So the much of a rebuke to the President Trump presidency compared to 2017 may actually be a little bit less than it was in 2017 as it may be in 2025. But then again, it still may be strong enough to replicate those numbers. The polling averages show Sears around 44%, 44%, and 43%. And Spanberger's already breaking 50% of the vote, with still 6% undecided. So mathematically, this could go anywhere from like a 5-point win for Spanberger all the way up to even like a 10 to 12-point win. It's really just depending what those undecided and third-party voters end up doing. Do they vote one way or the other? Do the third-party voters get a strong enough support of 1 to 2% or so? Do they do a little bit more? I think the way this race is shaping up right now is I think a 2017 repeat is certainly within the cards. I think it's going to be right around that 8 to 8.5 point margin. A few weeks ago, I did have it around a 9 to 9.5 point margin. I do think it's gone down a little bit as the race is getting closer. We see Winsome Sears forward support going up by about a point. But make no mistake, Abigail Spanberger is certainly in the driving seat for this race, right around either 50% or breaking 50% in all three polling averages. Most polls have her around 50% of the vote, pretty much guaranteed here, and is shaping up to be more of a 2017 governor's race than a 2021 governor's race in the state of Virginia. And ultimately, I think we're looking at that 2017 map, and I think this is what we're really looking out for. Now, the question is going to be, does Sears get 45%, and does Spanberger get up to 53.9, 54%? We're going to have to wait and see, but I think we're looking at something more like this in comparison to how things went. The only hiccup is, yes, Virginia was closer in 2024, voting for Harris by 5.8% over Donald Trump. But then again, back in 2020, when the Democrats' turnout was very high, Joe Biden won it by 10.1. Now, again, I don't think we're going to see 2017 levels of turnout in terms of anti-Trump sentiment, but then again, it is totally possible, especially considering the government shutdown and a lot of federal workers getting laid off. That may bring out Democratic turnout, especially in the DC suburbs, in higher numbers than maybe even in 2020 or 2017, which could ultimately lead to a very strong night for the Democrats. So I'm not trying to suppress what I think the Democrats are going to do in Virginia. I do think the Democrats are going to win Virginia, the governor's race, and I think they're going to win it by a pretty large margin. The question is going to be, how large does that margin get? Because right around 6.5% or so in the average, it is roughly about right around 2.5 points less than what the Democrats did in 2017. The question is going to be, do they get up to that number, and how close do they get, or do they exceed it? Do they go under? That's the main question for right now. But I think the Democrats are tracking right around a 2017 point win, maybe minus 0.5% or so when everything is said and done. So based on the polling data and everything right now, I do have, no surprise, the Democrats winning the Virginia governor's race, and I have it going in the likely Democratic category, which is in between a 5 and 15 point victory, and right around that 8 to 8.5 margin like it was in 2017 is what I'm currently projecting this race to go as of right now. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. Again, I just did a video on New Jersey yesterday. Make sure to go check that out if you're interested in that race as well. I'll have more videos coming out throughout the rest of the month of October about Virginia and New Jersey, so make sure you're not going to want to miss those. Thank you so much for watching, and again, please remember to hit like and subscribe, and hope to see you in a future video.